Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. Case studies are necessary but insufficient. And I have not prepped you on this episode at all. So I'm going to go ahead and make the statement.
What we're talking about.
And you tell me, does that make sense? What questions do you have about that? Case studies are necessary, but insufficient. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my first reaction, and we'll just ignore this one, is where did that come from? Something happened, and I'm curious to hear what it was. And the second thing I would say is it's a very astute statement because we as humans are always looking for the magic bullet. And I feel like case studies sometimes fall under that umbrella. And so I'm really interested to dig in for the folks who are listening around specifically the insufficiency, right? And what that's all about.
So we've had this conversation, I think, probably a few times here on the show around market sophistication. The idea that some markets are more sophisticated than others. And that's a framework to bring into this conversation, I think, because there are some markets in which case studies may be more sufficient, and they tend to be the lower sophisticated markets. There are markets in which if I can see that you've done something for a client like me in the past, if I can just see the result and see the case study without really understanding how it happened or what you did or, intellectually grappling with the approach, there are some markets within which that is sufficient. And my contention here is that if you're selling a high level, high value B2B consulting professional service, that's not the case, because your market and every B2B consulting market that we look at, and we've worked in all of them via our clients, are far more sophisticated than that. And there may have been a time in the past where a case study was sufficient, but now case studies are abundant. I can pretty much guarantee you, the listener, that all of your major competitors have great case studies. So then the question becomes, if everybody has great case studies, and they're necessary, because if you don't, that's like the cost of admission. If you don't have great case studies, you need to get them. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But what happens when everyone has great case studies? What happens when all of your competitors and yourself can say, well, I helped X, Y, and Z do A, B, and C? Then how is a client to choose?
You know what? Can I take us on an off ramp here for a minute? Because I want to stop for a second and just talk about what is a great case study. And I want to have that conversation because I see it done really, really badly, really, really often, right? This notion of just because I got somebody to show up and say something nice about me, or I was able to, tell I got them, or say that I did something to get them to X in, Y. That doesn't make a good case study or great case study for your prospect necessarily. And so let's have that conversation first, because I think then we can move on to, okay, now we know what a good case study is. When is that not even enough? Versus my fear, folks out there listening, with really kind of lukewarm case studies. And we're sort of jumping an extra layer or extra level into a level of sophistication that they're not necessarily up for it quite yet.
Well, so what's going to end up happening is we're going to say good case studies are sufficient. I can tell you that right now. Because what is a good case study? Let's define it. Okay, fair point. So if you're going around telling people, well, I helped ABC Corp do X, Y, and Z, that is not a case study. That is a headline. That is a bullet point. Okay. A case study is an articulation of where a client was before they started working with you, what their struggle was, what their challenge was, what their problem was. It's an articulation of what you did, the work that was executed on, the deliverables that were provided, the activities that were engaged, and how those activities yielded a tangible result or outcome. And the key here is that connection between the before and the after, right? So a fairly superficial case study will have a before and I'll have an after. And that's like, I call that a B, in terms of I'm grading your case, that's a B. An A+ case study will have that linkage in the middle. Here's what we did and here's how we did it in a way that yielded this result or got them from the before to the after. And this is the piece that my contention here is necessary, because I can believe that you got somebody a result and that's perfectly fine. Like, that's fairly believable. But can you convince me that the process that you took them through is also going to apply to me? And can I buy into your process intellectually? And that requires you to be clear about your processes outside of the case study. But it's also essential to making the case study effective, relevant, believable.
That's interesting, because the way you described it, I would only give it an A. And I'll propose something else that I think needs to be included. I'm curious to know what you think about this, because I also see far too often case studies that are all about me, right? As the consultant. I did this, I did this, I did that. I'm a superhero, all the things, right? And what I would also say, the thing that actually tips it over in A+ territory, is it needs to be a case study that lets your client or your prospect see themselves. It needs to, you talked about intellectually buying in, but they need to also be able to kind of emotionally to buy into, this is a thing that would also work for me. Not because that other client was exactly the same as I am, not because, any of those things, but this is yet another opportunity to connect, right? As opposed to launching a case study that's basically, your flashy resume and expecting that someone's going to get excited about that. Now, there's certainly positives there, and you need to bring that information to the table. But the other question I would ask you is, who cares, right? Why does that prospect even care to pay attention to this case study? What is it about it that reaches out to them and makes them believe that you are someone who could also support them in getting where they want to be?
Yeah, so you're unlocking the so what of the case study.
Yeah.
Right, because the headline of you helped the client get this result, literally, who cares? Right? Nobody actually cares unless two things are true. One is if you can show me that the client's somewhat similar to me, and it doesn't need to be exactly the same. It doesn't need to be the exact industry, company size. I mean, those are details, but there's some relevance to the client situation is relevant to mine. There's some comparison that can be made. Okay, now I may be interested, right? And this is where a lot of folks fall short, is they'll go, well, we helped company X in this industry get this result. Just because they're in my industry doesn't make them relevant to me. What was it about their situation beforehand that's relevant to me? What's comparable to my situation now? The fact that we share an industry is, if somebody said to me, well, I have a case in how a training organization doubled the revenue, I don't care. Training is a massive market. How is that relevant to me? So that's one, is what's relevant about the situation they were in before to me? How does it compare to my situation? And two, to your point, what's going to make me believe that you can do it for me? Because, frankly, a case study could be a fluke. A case study could be, you got lucky. A case study could be the result of, the client's a really good client, and any consultant could have come in and gotten great results if they knew what they were doing. What was it about what you did? What was it about your execution? What was it about your unique proprietary process that unlocked the results that otherwise could not have been had with any other process? That's a case study. And now I'm going to go back on my comment, right? Because that case study, that is sufficient. And I suppose what I was calling out earlier was the superficial case studies that just talk about results, and that's good. I don't mean to, disparage the importance of talking about results. More people should talk about results, but talk about results in a way that's relevant to the people that you're targeting and want to serve, and shows them not only the proof that you got results, which is table stakes, but also a process by which they can get results too. That's the case study.